Spirit Switchboard, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, New Orleans. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spirit Switchboard. We are broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. Today, we are welcoming J.M Debord, aka RadOwl. Jason is the most trusted name in the dream interpretation. He is the best-selling author of Dream Interpretation Dictionary, the creator of Dreams 1, 2, 3, and the host of Dreams That Shape Us podcast. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you, Carrie Lynn. It's great to be here and to have this fun interactive session with you and with your audience. So Spirit Switchboard, hello audience. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. I have to be honest, I was really kind of nervous about bringing you on to the show because I set the intention to not dream. I intentionally put that out there before I go to sleep that I need a night off. I want to sleep so sound that I wake the neighbors up snoring. So I'm like, oh my goodness. Because I was overthinking all of that. Like when you really are digging into your dreams, if you dig deep into them, you are opening yourself up and really going to those vulnerable, raw places and getting to know who you are, right?
Yeah.
So
and you need to have the energy and the attention for it, and it is okay to ask for a night off.
Thank you. Sometimes 6 or 7 nights in a row.
Me too. Yeah, especially when I'm exhausted. You know, in sleep studies show that when people go to bed exhausted, that they're very unlikely to remember much from their dreams. So there's some preparation needed for it. If you want to have, you want to remember your dreams, then that you need to have the rest that you need. Otherwise, your body is going to take the priority. And brain included. It needs a night off. It might need a week off, but eventually you'll have that energy back and you'll be able to kind of get into the swing of things again,
right?
With your dream life.
And it's looking at everything from a mindful, intentional place, right? That we can look at dreams as intentional as well too, not just something that happens randomly. Even though I understand that dreams can happen randomly, but we can set our intention with them as well too. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Don't answer that question just yet. I'm setting it up too early because I want to get there, but I want to hear about the journey first, because I'm sure that when you were starting off looking at your path and purpose, this was not where you envisioned where you would land.
No, it wasn't. I was in college and I was studying political journalism. I had a dual track of studying government and politics, and then working in journalism and also studying it. And I had this idea that I would follow in the footsteps of, some of the, say like a Ted Koppel type. And although more in the newspaper biz, this was in the 1990s. And then my life got sent off in a new direction. And it was because I started working with dreams after a friend of mine, a neighbor, handed me a chapter of a book that was in preprint. And it was from a local counselor, psychotherapist, who talked about dreams and someone who became very pivotal in my life. And that was Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, who had so much to say about dream psychology and then relating that into exploration of who and what you are, finding out the deeper aspects of yourself. And at that time, in my life, I was very externally focused. I was in college. I was looking forward to a career, very active in my campus community at the University of Cincinnati. And finding Jung, or maybe Jung found me, took my life off in a new direction, because once I started looking at the dreams and the psychology of it and the theory and concepts, and then the other side of the coin, which is keeping a dream journal and going through analysis of my dreams with the therapist who wrote that book. I actually ended up looking him up, and one day I dropped into his office, not out of the, I had an appointment, but one day I show up there and I'm sitting across the table, or from, in his office, sitting across from him, talking about my dreams. And that set me off on a path to find out as much as I could about the subject, both through the concept and theory and the, sort of the education side of it, but also through the personal experience. So it's been 30 years since that day, and it definitely took my life off in an unexpected direction.
So having 30 years behind you in your own personal journey, supporting others on their journey, writing about it, do you find that, have you had moments where you're still learning something new, where you've met a client or run into somebody where there's okay, that's a new one, here we go? Do you have moments that surprise you still?
All the time. I came at this from a background of sort of conventional theory and practice. It's kind of the clinical side of it, you could say. Even though I wasn't studying to be a psychologist, I was on the other end of the couch. I was the guy being, analyzed. And I found all that to be really fascinating. But you could say that when I got out in the wild and started talking with people about their dreams, what they wanted to know about were the precognitive dreams, the ones that seem to show the future, the visitation dreams, where they seem to be in contact with most commonly a deceased loved one, but there can also be, shall we say, other forms of intelligence that they come in contact with. And that stuff really got me interested. I wanted to explore it because I would get asked about that a lot more than the theory side of it and concepts and psychology. People were like, well, why did my mom, she's been gone for 10 years and she keeps coming to me in my dreams. Why is that happening? Or man, I can't tell you how many times I've dreamed something and then it came true, soon after. And so I wanted to find out as much as I could about that. So that opened up a whole area of exploration for me. And I'm always finding new things to explore, new aspects of dreaming. Lately, I've been getting into the dream healing. Turns out there's a tradition of this, Carrie Lynn, that goes back about 2,500 years to the temples of Asclepius. And they were active actually long. It was almost 3,000 years that we can tell from, historical dating. And they ran for, into about the 4th century AD until they were shut down by the emerging Christian forces of Rome, decided that they didn't like this whole pagan god thing. But it opened up a whole avenue because there's a guy named Ed Tick, who's a psychotherapist, who went to Greece, pilgrimaged to the temples, and had his own experience of incubating healing dreams. And it has guided him as a psychotherapist who works with people with PTSD. So to answer your question, yes, there's always something new to be learned. And even after 30 years of pursuing, I grabbed this thing by the tail and it ran and I ran with it. I'm always finding something new to explore, and it's endlessly fascinating.
And expanding from what you just shared, like everyone wants to be felt like they're seen and heard. Everyone wants to be seen and heard. And so when we're sharing a dream, how detrimental is it to dismiss somebody when they're sharing a dream or a nightmare?
Yeah. And that really, that rubs my fur the wrong way. Because
especially the dreams that are visitation.
Yeah. And for people to dismiss it is because it doesn't fall into their paradigm of what's real or not. It's called the materialist paradigm. And according to them, there is no such thing as visitation dreams because there is no such thing as life after death. All experience, all phenomena, everything about our world, including people, can be explained through the workings of matter. And there's an element within that community that is, for one, immature, but two, they attack anyone who dares to disagree with them. And so as a moderator at reddit.com, at r/dreams, so it's dreams.reddit.com, I've been there as a member of the community since 2009.
It's a large community.
Over 300,000 subscribers. It's one of the top 1% on Reddit. And it's, I have found as a moderator there that there are people who will come in and dismiss other people's experiences. They'll say, oh, dreams aren't meaningful. You shouldn't be paying attention to this hogwash anyway. Or they'll have an experience like a visitation dream. And, you know, when someone shares their dreams, they're sharing something that's very intimate and personal to them. Mm-hmm. And to have someone just step all over that can really be damaging. So we've done our best to create a community there that is well moderated and that we won't tolerate that kind of stuff. You can disagree. We allow open conversation. You can be like, there is no such thing as visitation dreams. And I can go, well, let's talk about that. But to dismiss a person for that is, it's very harmful. And even if you go into the psychological literature on the subject, the study of grief in particular, dreams have been a whole subset of the study of grief, because people often dream about the people that, the living, the people who remain, often dream about their deceased loved ones. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that's come out of this is that the dreams themselves can be very healing and cathartic. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not a real visitation, you're interacting with that person in your dream space, and it really seems like them. And you're having an experience of interacting with them because you believe it to be true while you are dreaming. Mm-hmm. So it is an experience. It's not just a dream, So these are very important things to remember when you talk with people about their dreams. Just mm-hmm. basically remember the human, which is one of the main rules at reddit.com. Remember that you're interacting with a human being and they have feelings, and never dismiss things out of hand, because as we're finding out, a lot of these things that we've considered to be, shall we say, mysterious are actually turning out to be true. I mean, I've been all over the UFO boards at Reddit.
Yes.
With all this new information that's coming out about the crash retrieval programs, and the information that's in the pipeline that's soon going to be made public is going to be, without a doubt, absolutely without a doubt, that these craft, we've been visited, and it's been going on for a long time. It's been known for a long time. And all those people for the last 60, 70 years who've been saying, this is all just a big crock of doo-doo and you're crazy for thinking that it might be true, they're all going to be eating crow here real soon. So, keep it
and
open.
when we dismiss somebody, we're really changing the dynamics where one person can be in more control or in more power than that other person. When somebody is vulnerably sharing a transparent moment and you take that away from them, so they shrink and hide, they no longer share, they no longer express themselves, and that changes the power dynamics in that. I work as a medium, so I've had that ability to connect to the other side from the time I was little. It's been my truth and my reality since I was small. So I have clients continuously say, and it does bring them comfort when they are dreaming about their loved ones that are on the other side. A common thing is that they don't speak.
And that the communication is telepathic.
Yes.
If there's a two-way conversation going, there's different things that Edgar Cayce said about this that people can find out if they want to know how to differentiate those dreams. Go ahead, Carrie.
No, that's okay. You can feel free to share, because you have, this is your world. You are bringing me into your world and educating me, because like I said earlier, I was nervous because I intentionally try not to dream. So this was my opportunity to be okay with that too, and to ask questions from a place of wonder. I am always in a place of wonder, and I want to ask as many questions as possible so I can understand. and come from a
Well,
place of understanding.
then let me point you towards dreams123.net.
Yes.
And that is my blog. It started off that way many years ago. And I compiled a checklist on there. It's visitation dreams is the main headline of it. And it's um, is it real? Basically is the subtitle. And so what I found is that there are differences between dreams that are conventional in the sense that your loved one is an image produced by the dream for you to interact with we'll call it the psychological impression of them that is imprinted into your mind.
Right.
This person was an important part of your life, and there's a whole memory structure complex associated with them. And even though they're gone physically now, their memory still very much exists within you.
And it's a vibration you remember.
Yeah. And even like the sort of an energy of the person, you can sense that and feel it in the dream. Now, you can have a conventional dream where you are interacting with what they represent to you, the impression of them. A lot of people, they're dealing with grief and loss. And the fact that that person is no longer an active part of their life, their brain is literally remapping the memory structures around that center of their brain that used to be devoted to the person that they love. And now that person is gone, and their brain actually has to rewire itself. So you're going to have a lot of dreams that are these neurophysiological processes, memory processes, emotional processes. And then you're going to have dreams. Some people, let's be clear about that. This doesn't happen for everyone. Some people will have dreams where the presence, the consciousness of that person comes to visit them in the dream state. So on my blog, I put together a checklist. What makes a visitation dream different from an ordinary, shall we say, conventional dream? And one of them is what you mentioned, telepathic communication. The mouths don't have to move. You can get sort of thought forms from the person. Mostly you feel them. You can have conversations that you translate as words, but they don't necessarily begin as words. What you're getting are information downloads from the person, the consciousness of the person that you're interacting with. They never bring guilt trips. They never look like they're sick or in distress. They never come to you in anger, sadness, fear. Those dreams are the ones that you're working through your internal stuff. It is not them. So in that checklist you can find, because I think it's important for people to be able to know, especially when it's like, my mom, she's gone now. She came to me in a dream and she said, "Save me, I'm dying." And, like they think that there's something happening in the afterlife where they need help. And I mean, talk about powerless. But what the dream is doing is maybe helping you to reprocess that sense of powerless that you felt when they were near the end of their life and there was nothing you could do to save them. It's creating a scenario for you to re-experience those emotions so that they can be reprocessed and, shall we say, put to rest.
I've always said to clients that it's always going to be a loving, positive feeling attached to whatever the message is, and vividly clear. Like, you write out the details, stick it in your drawer, wait 3-6 months, a year, write it out again, and those messages, it's the exact written detail back to back, where it just doesn't ever change or fade or go away. It's the experience that's really sticks with you. There's such a big difference in that visitation type experience as opposed to a dream where you're working out some deep rooted emotional spaces, right?
Yeah.
So
they come with a message too. There's usually something.
Exactly.
In one case, there was this came from the literature of the Edgar Cayce material. There was and it's an Elsie Sechrist book, Dreams, Your Magic Mirror. I think it's in that one, or it's in Harmon Bro's book. Sorry. But in the case, this was a lady whose mother had died, and the mother came back in her dreams and started communicating with her. At first, she had to kind of overcome some things related to belief. She didn't think that such things were possible, but it was then proven to her. And one of the ways it was proven was mom told her that her sister was contemplating suicide. And the woman who was the receiver of the dream then
Right.
followed up with her sister and found out that her sister really was contemplating this. And
Wow.
it wasn't something that she was letting on to anyone. So, it was hidden information. I have another example where a man was selling the home. His father had died, and his son was selling the home. He was the man that had the dream. He knew that the father had a gun, and that it must have been somewhere in the house, but they couldn't find it. So he's like, Dad, where's that gun? I can't sell this house to someone and take the risk of their children finding a loaded firearm in a secret place. He said he had a dream that night where his father showed him in the house where the gun was. He said it was in a secret compartment that no one even knew existed. So when you can get information like that through a dream, it's the hallmark of something more going on than just, deep intuition or something like that.
Yeah.
Like having your memory jogged. Oh yeah, Dad had that secret hiding place. I wonder if he put the gun there. The son said
Right.
that he never even knew that the place existed in his father's home, and he
Love
couldn't have
that.
possibly known the gun would be there. So, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I step into a big pile of, when I'm talking about the love and lighter world,
I have
because
no idea.
I am part of it, but I think that we can get too fluffy and airy fairy where we're just focusing just on the love and lighty part, and we don't want to dig into where the rawness is. And so if you're going to grow your conscious awareness and you think that dreams are also giving you those opportunities, then we have to be open to the fact that what makes us super uncomfortable, like our nightmares, are also trying to push forward some type of conscious awareness for us as well too. You can chime in. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Teach me and educate me.
Well, this was an area that I had to find out as much as I could about it, because my publisher came to me a couple of years ago, and said, hey, we have a concept for a book. Basically, it's about how to interpret nightmares, and we'd love for you to write it. This is how things often work in the publishing world. The publisher comes up with a concept or an idea, and then they look for the right writer to, the right author. And so I got into nightmares and found that I was already something of an expert on the subject because I'd had my own experiences with it. And yes, nightmares are trying to surface something that needs your attention. That's the simplest way of understanding the reason behind nightmares. Now, there are other causes. You could eat something that's not digesting so well. You could have a sudden shocking event in your life. Oh, today I got laid off of work. My life has been thrown upside down, or my important relationship ended. I got in a fight with someone on the street, an argument at the store. Something happens and there's an emotion to it that's unprocessed. Those are really more of the types of nightmares that come and go, and they're situation based, in the sense of like, something happened recently, you need to process it, and there's some heavy emotion involved with it, so it's going to show in your dream state. Then there are nightmares that happen because they say you got something that you need to fix, usually involved with healing, some kind of trauma. But also what Dr. Carl Jung said about nightmares is that they most frequently arise from a sort of conflict between the conscious side of the mind and the unconscious side. A lot of people don't realize that the conscious side of them is about yay big compared to the unconscious side of them. The unconscious is 95% or more of the total mind. Some neuroscientists say that it's even higher. Above 99% of the mind is unconscious. That means that what you know about yourself is the little corner, and then there's this vast world of mind that you're not consciously aware of. And the ego can take an antagonistic relationship towards the unconscious because it's programming, which goes all the way back to the beginning of our species. The unconscious mind is the original mind of the human species. It's probably the original mind of whatever life forms that we grew out of biologically, and also perhaps spiritually. And it has an agenda. The agenda is to make you more conscious, to put it simply. And oftentimes it has to shock the ego out of some kind of torpor that it's in. Mm-hmm. So it raises or surfaces information that's uncomfortable for the ego. And that's the way that the ego reacts to the content determines what type of experience it has while it's dreaming. That could be a nightmare because you are running from something that is actually coming from you internally. And there's information that you don't want to know. There are steps to advance yourself ethically, morally, spiritually, emotionally that you're resisting. So the nightmares just keep cranking up the volume. But the other side of it also is that they can do that because there's something in your life that is chronically dysfunctional and it's gone on too long and you need to do something about it because it is really affecting your health, mental, physical, spiritual. Right. And it's, So I often say that nightmares are the volume on 11. Take me back to Spinal Tap. I've got an 11 on my amplifier, and that's called nightmares. And when you have nightmares, they won't go away on their own. That's the important thing to remember. Unless it's one of those nightmares I talked about at the beginning, you did something bad or you're processing a sudden shocking event. Those are one-time things. But especially if the nightmares recur, it's not going away on its own.
That was leading into my next question was if we have those here we go again sort of moments during our waking time, like where there's something that's repeating, trying to get our attention to take notice. So recurring nightmares would be that equivalent of here we go again until you pay attention to have the aha moment. Is that correct?
Yeah. And the research shows that nightmares tend to go away once the message has been received. So if you want to, this is the number one thing. If you want your nightmares to go away, get the message. It may not be as easy. Like there might be, like if you live in an abusive household, like, you've got an abuser, they're in your space 24 hours a day, or, that might not be an easy situation to be able to handle. But if you recognize that the bad guy or girl in your dreams is a representation of that person, now you can understand the content better and you can do something. How do people who you hear about them being caught in abusive relationships for, months or years, how do they eventually make the decision that they're going to get out of it? Sometimes it's because their nightmares will force them into some kind of action. There's always something that you can learn from your dreams, even the bad ones. And the bad ones are especially important for addressing the things in your life that need to change.
Right. It initiates growth, or it's trying to push growth.
Yeah. And much the same way like shock therapy, it's kind of a drastic measure. But here's the thing that we find out from dreams, from the study of dreams, is that oftentimes the message was already in earlier dreams that were much milder than the way they presented them, but you don't get the message, so they keep cranking the volume, and eventually it rises to the level of nightmare.
Yeah, and I find with sessions, when loved ones are coming through, they could be saying the same thing, like, we're trying to give them all these subtle signs and ways that we're trying to connect with them, but they're missing it because they're so busy or stressed or they've got a hectic life, but they're missing it. So it amps up. I always say it's like a little kid in the back of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How about now? Until they get so loud, right? So dreams sound like it's the same thing. They're going to amp up.
Yeah. Or like an animal, a pet that is left out in the cold while everybody else is inside the nice, warm, well-lit home.
Yeah.
And what happens over time is the animal, I'm thinking of like a dog that's out, what are you all doing inside? And you're leaving me out here. And they'll become more and more distressed, and they'll start showing it. They'll start acting out. And you could think of sometimes the things that are going on in your dreams that are of that nature. It's some side of you that's saying, I'm trying to get your attention. And if you won't do it yourself, I will keep insisting. And it's going to
Right.
get louder. It's going to get louder and louder until you give me the attention that I'm asking for.
We do have a comment from a Facebook user saying, I have a detailed, vivid, bloody, reoccurring nightmare that my twin sister, brother, and mother are trying to kill me.
Well, we would need more detail. I can only give kind of a surface answer to that,
Yep.
and it deserves more of an answer, a deeper.
And that's okay too, to send them where, or guide in the way that you feel best, right?
Well, yes, and so what I'll do is I'll share with the person who asked the question what I've from my experience with that type of dream. For one, is the something about your relationship situation feels like it is killing you. In the same way that when we use a figure of speech, we say, God, the stress is really killing me.
Right.
Well, it doesn't mean that there's someone's grabbed the knife and they're chasing you around the living room, but it's an expression of how you feel. Dreams are very good at dramatizing that. They exaggerate, but in the same way that a metaphor exaggerates. It makes a comparison between two things to express a deeper underlying and usually very personal meaning.
Right.
In the case of dreams and nightmares. So when these family members come at you and they're killing you or trying to kill you, that would be the first place we would go if we were doing a dream work session together. Is we would go, okay, is this metaphorically true? Sometimes just acknowledging that that's the way that you feel helps to lessen the impact of the dreams and the future dreams and the way that you feel about the ones that you're looking back on, because oftentimes those kinds of dreams feel energetically very present and alive in you. It's like you're still being hunted down by your family members. And if you can understand that there's a deeper expression of feeling and that maybe it just is something that needs to be acknowledged because probably you're justifying something to yourself, is, like you'll hear someone say, well, yeah, they treat me that way, but I deserve it because I did XYZ. I wasn't I wasn't a good child. So of course my mom is going to get upset with me, or I caused a lot of pain for my family. So, the whatever it is that they pay me back, that they react towards me now, I deserve it. And so there's something deeper in them that's, if they having dreams like that, there's something deeper in them that wants them to, re-examine that. This other thing about a dream where family members, anyone is trying to kill you is it does express a dynamic that something needs to change. Death in dreams is usually related to that. In my book, Nightmares,
Yes.
Interpreting Your Darkest Dreams, I have an entire section on this subject where we talk about killing and the different ways that dreams create scenarios that express dynamics of what's going on in relationships and in your feelings. And then there's one other thing to consider is that if you look at something like that and you go, well, there's nothing I can find in my relationship with those people who are trying to kill me in my dreams, these family members, we all get along great. There's no conflict between us. I don't feel guilty about anything. So why would I be having such a brutal dream? And there's obviously something needs to change, and it might be in your attitude or relationship towards those people. Because the thing you find from dream psychology and just experience with dreams is that the characters in your dreams are all aspects of yourself that are brought to life. So it looks like mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, aunt, best friend, teacher that you knew, the people who are now actively part of your life or were once part of your life. These characters will be coming in all the time into your dreams. And they're all you they're personified aspects of yourself brought to life. So you would turn the question around and go, well, what is it about me that is taking form as them? And why is my interaction with them characterized as this violent situation? And it could be that you find in the end that you're doing violence to yourself through the way that you talk to yourself. It could be that you've internalized voices from the people, like, within the situation. It's presumably people that the person grew up with. And you would go, well, was there something that about your interaction and your relationship with them and the way that they responded to you that you've internalized, and it is doing real harm internally? I've seen this in a lot of nightmares where people have internalized voices of shame and criticism, and they continue repeating them to themselves. You have something I can hear that sudden intake of breath.
No. I know with clients, not necessarily a personal experience, but I know with clients that guilt or shame can create so many blocks that do play out in dream time and showing up as nightmares. And I do see that with clients as well too, repeatedly. Yeah. The client that did ask that question said 100% metaphorically true, and thank you.
Good. Okay. I'm always happy to hear that dreams can be they can reach so deep inside a person, and I don't even know, the client you're talking about. So, for me to be able to sit here and, even get close to what they're experiencing as their truth is, it's a cause for celebration.
Yeah. In your book, Nightmares, Your Guide to Interpreting Your Darkest Dreams, you're very transparent with sorry, I should have waited a second.
I know where you're going with this. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no. You're very transparent with your journey, both with your nightmare and aspects of your life, in seeking help and how you sought help in various methods as well too, alternative and otherwise. So would you mind sharing that with us?
First, I want to say that as soon as when the publisher brought the book concept to me and said, we want you to write this book, we're giving you free reign to do it the way that you can do it best, but just write about how to interpret nightmares. And the first thought I had was, I am not going to talk about my experience because this is not ready for prime time.
Right. And it's vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah. And people can wonder whether you're, because what I experienced is the kind of thing that can make you doubt whether you have a full grasp on reality. Because you're
talking to somebody that talks to dead people for a living, so you're in good company today.
Okay. All right, then let's get into it. This was important. What I realized is that I had a responsibility to talk about my experience because there are other people who've had them.
Exactly. It's open heart, open mind, and realizing our truth may not be the same as somebody else's truth, but all we can do is share unconditionally from our space. And when it's time, people will be ready to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I risk some people losing a certain amount of respect for me as a dream interpreter and an expert, then I had to take that risk in the sense that there's a very conventional side of this that some people are very, very attached to the conventional side of it, of whatever subject. But with dreaming, you can really, you can get people who will go, oh, you think that's true? You think deceased people actually exist and they can come to you in your dreams? Or in my case, what I had coming into my dreams, I figured out after 30 years of struggling with this thing, that what I had was, okay, spoiler alert. What I had,
you don't have to spoiler alert.
No. This is okay. This is in the book, and then I opened the book with the first half of the story, and
Yeah.
I closed the book with the second half of the story. The first half of the story is I'm 9 years old. I have a nightmare where this dark master, like the Dark Lord from Star Wars, even though the movies had just come out in the late 1970s, I didn't know what this guy was. What I knew was that I was minding my own business in my dream, having fun riding my bike, and this guy comes up on me and he's there to take my soul. I'm 9 years old. I don't even know what a soul is. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
basic idea of it, but I knew that he wanted not just to kill me, he wanted to take my soul. So I'm like, I'm out of here, and I'm, pedaling away on my bike, and he's in a car, like, yeah, I'm not getting away from him. He tracks me down in the back of a store, and the last thing I'm hiding, and the last thing is that he's bearing down on me. So I wake up out of the dream and I'm like, nightmare, probably screaming my head off, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was a nightmare. I'm in my bed. I'm okay. All right. No bad man is, after me. A lot of people, and this is true, and let's just say 99% of the time, something like that is going to be, it's not going to be a real spiritual entity that's after you. And in fact, it's a really bad idea to go there first. I
Yeah.
had to whittle away the possibilities over the years to figure out what that thing was. What happened later is that I went into this basically, this guy kept popping up in my nightmares. And there were synchronicities in my life that happened that kept bringing this nightmare back to my attention because I was doing my best to forget about it. And then I got into my teenage years and I just kind of left a blood trail behind me. My psyche was shattered by some experiences that I had. And this guy followed the blood trail. This thing in my dreams, I say this guy, he later identified himself by name. And I had confrontations with him in my dreams, very vivid, powerful, epic confrontations with him. And I had a sense that he was more than just a nightmare figure, but I couldn't admit that to myself. I
Yeah.
tried very hard not to admit it to myself. And I, so that gets me into my late 20s. I continue having nightmares about this guy, epic battles. And I got into my 30s, and this guy would always show up when I was like starting to really rise out of the dark places that I'd been in my life. And he was trying to drag me back into it again. So I noticed these patterns over time, and I started getting the idea that there was more to him because details started emerging about him and about the situation that had caused him to continue being attached to me because it was part of a generational curse.
Mm.
So this is generational trauma exists. It gets passed down. You can sometimes have memories of trauma that happened in your family that you don't
Sure.
even realize that these are memories that are you experience them as if they're your own memories, but they're not. These events never happened in your life, but you can re-experience these things that happened to your ancestors. And so generational trauma has been shown to pass down this way. And there is a whole kind of subset of people, and I bet as a medium that you've probably dealt with something along the lines of generational curses, where something happened that was so violent, so traumatic, that it caused an energy that gets passed down to the future generations.
It's
Sometimes,
not where I go first, though, with clients. I'll still go left brain first. And I still believe that therapy is super important as well, too, in weeding out any of those things and then looking at those generational curses or entities that may be attached from soul family that you had never even met.
yeah, and
Like,
that's what I found out, and it was the last place I wanted to go. I mean, I did not want to think that that could even possibly be true. But things were transpiring in my life that felt like I was up against more than just my own, shall we say, addictions and proclivities, my
right.
own personal flaws and weaknesses. It felt like something was zapping me with black energy. And I had someone who pointed me towards a psychic shaman. Uh, he's a counselor, left-brained, like he's
Perfect.
master's degree in counseling,
Yeah.
very much knowledgeable of psychotherapy, but also an energy worker and a trance medium.
It's
His name
brilliant.
is Steve Rogat, Rogat. Steve Rogat. Highly recommend Steve. Love you, Steve. He's down your way, by the way. He's in Florida now. I know you're in New Orleans, but
No, I'm actually in Guelph, Ontario, Canada. I'm just outside of Toronto.
oh wow, okay. Well, yeah, an interconnected world. I should know. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
so Steve was recommended to me because somebody in my life recognized that there was more going on. She had the same feeling that I did about the situation.
Right.
That there were deeper roots to it. And I went to Steve. I told him my story, and he does the consult his spirit guides thing. He just kind of withdraws into himself, and he comes back and he goes, my friend, you have you've got a generational curse going on here, and this dude in your dreams is actually a metaphysical entity that was the one who cast the curse against your family, and he is tied to the black magic that he used. People might say that this is, I'm sure there's some minds going, like black magic curses. You believe this crap? This has been going back centuries. We have piles of documented evidence that there were members of occult and mystery schools and Luciferian and satanic black magic groups. They have these traditions in all different religions. There's the left-hand path, the dark path, and there are people who acquire power through it. They are the Sith, like the Jedi. There were the Jedi who were the Luke Skywalkers and the Yodas, and then you have the Sith, the Darth Vaders, and and I just recently found out that this is acknowledged in occult practice, that if you dabble in the black magic, that there will be an aspect of your soul that will always be chained to the power that you abuse, and that after you die, this part of yourself will remain in the earth plane, tied to the power that it used against people. And that I didn't know at the time that's what I was dealing with. What I know is I'm sitting in this guy's office and he tells me this stuff and I'm like, okay. And then his next question is, you ready to do something about it? And I'm like, okay, yeah. So we basically conducted a shamanic ritual. He started off by working my energy system. And he said that he found a black thing between my shoulder blades over my heart chakra. He said that this was like a blade that had been stuck into my back, an energetic, metaphysical thing. But he said that it was there, it was lodged there, and that this is how this sorcerer was zapping me with black energy, dark energy. And I was like, that explains then why I sometimes have these electrical feelings through my body of being hit with something bad, And he said that also he used it to sort of whisper into my mind and get me off track when I would be kind of full of light and love and living the light side, He's like, yeah, this thing wants you. It wants you on the dark side. So like, boom, Luke Skywalker, what did they do to him? They tried to convert him over to the dark side like his father Darth, Anakin. So now I have a mythology to follow, even though it's from movies. There's a whole mythology behind Star Wars that people identify with, that battle versus light versus dark. So we went into shamanic ritual, and I actually had telepathic contact with that. He called himself the Dark Master, and so that was my experience. And I can never. When I have people who come to me for help with their nightmares, I don't go there first. I don't go there second, third, fourth, or fifth. But if we try everything else and find that we are still not finding the roots of what's going on in someone's nightmares, then if there are other signs that this is more for me, there were synchronicities in the waking world that happened that told me that this was more than self-contained experience in my
Right.
nightmares, that there was more that was happening, because I actually had him at times manifest through the people who I heard him speak through their mouths. This was one time that, for lack of better words, I'll call him a crackhead. He was obviously somebody who was a street person who was under that spell. And I was talking with a friend about this stuff because he had just had a paranormal encounter and I was trying to help him to understand it. And this man walked up out of the blue and he looks at me with the most hateful look in his eyes. And he says, "Stop talking about this shit." He couldn't hear what we were saying. We were having a low key conversation 50 feet away from him as he's walking down the sidewalk. And I see his head snap over like he's possessed by something. And his head snaps over and he looks at us. And I could feel his dark presence coming and congealing into
Right.
our space, and walks right up and looks me in the eyes and says that. And I'm like, wow, man, like, you know, so I have to treat these things as real. It was the only way of confronting it. And this is something that I've learned through my friend Linda Schiller wrote a book called PTS Dreams. She's a psychotherapist. And one of the things that I learned from Linda is that you have to treat these experiences as having a reality to them, because otherwise they're too easy to dismiss as unreal. And the way that
Yeah.
people can dismiss dreams in general as unreal and not worthy of your time and consideration. And that if you treat it as real, even as objectively real, then it gives you the right frame of mind to be able to approach, heal, and resolve it.
Right. If you are just joining us here on Spirit Switchboard, we are broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. I want to pick up where you had left off, Jason, and there's accountability in it, right? Like if we think about, The Secret. So many people read that book, The Secret, about the power of manifesting. And so again, it's in that love and light place, right? We're manifesting our goals, we're making our vision boards, we're doing all of those things. Do you find people struggle to accept that they play a part in the nightmares as well too? Like that there's some accountability or a piece that
Oh yeah. Because if you were owning it, it wouldn't have to pop you upside the head. If you were owning it to begin with, then it wouldn't have to be presented to you so dramatically in the form of a nightmare. You could have a dream about it in a more normal sort of way without having to have it all amped up and brought to your attention. There is something that comes through dreaming, engaging with dreams, your dream life, engaging with it, that it's something that comes forward that you will figure out as you go through this process is that your dreams are trying to make you accountable for yourself, and to take ownership of everything about yourself in your life. And that by doing so, you claim territory in your own mind that had once not been under your conscious control.
right.
You allow these rogue parts of yourself to develop when you don't take ownership of them. Carl Jung calls them complexes. They become these little knotted, thorny parts of your psyche where there's a complex of thoughts and feelings and attitudes and behaviors that all constellate around something. And it's usually something in you that is hurt, that has been fragmented or fractured. And the very fact that you're dreaming about it means that your unconscious mind is leading you into a place where you need to go to reclaim some lost part of yourself. And taking ownership of it is the very first thing that you have to do. I've seen this work in nightmares where there is some kind of a dark thing, just call it a monster, but that includes spiritually dark things that come after you. They pursue you in your nightmares, and what they're asking you to do is to take ownership of them. In my podcast, The Dreams That Shape Us, we recently had Ryan Hurd on, and Ryan has experienced some really wild things in his dreams. One of the things that he learned to do in the dreams is that no matter how dark something was that approached him in the dream space, how monstrous, how frightening, he said he learned how to embrace it with radical love, and he would watch it transform before his very eyes. And so this is what we're being asked not just to take ownership, but to embrace it all with love and to own it. Even though you might feel like you didn't cause it, you're not the source, you're not responsible. It's out there and you're in here. You need to embrace it with radical love, and that includes acceptance. And it'll heal whatever it is that's been broken. I know mediums who tell me that when they encounter disincarnates, they'll sometimes fragmented parts of people that have been left behind by trauma, people who delved into the dark side and never got out of it. That is also what they do when they encounter them, in session or in dreams or in astral. Is that what they learned is that they embrace it with radical love. And I've also been learning recently that this is a spiritual principle that was taught by the raw material, RA. The raw material teaches this, and it comes down through Edgar Cayce and what he refers to as children of the law of one. This was a priesthood that goes back many thousands of years before recorded history and continues on to this day. And in that priesthood, Melchizedek, they're called the priests of Melchizedek. They practice this radical love, and their mission on earth is to find all the broken pieces and reunite them with the Maker. And that includes the most horrendous people who've ever lived and are still living in this world, and that they're embracing it. So to circle back to dreams and nightmares, this is one of the things that you can learn for yourself by embracing everything in your dreams with that radical love, and you can see them transform before your eyes. And you can also have experiences of the divine light in your dreams is like anything. It's unlike anything that you can't imagine what it's like. But when you do this practice of radical love, you learn it in your waking life, it carries over into your dream life. And by practicing it and applying it to what you encounter in your dreams, you find that it actually activates this power of divine love. In season 3, episode 1 of The Dreams That Shape Us, we had an interview with Professor Scott Sparrow, and he talks about his experiences with this. He's a professor of counseling, and he's a longtime lucid dreamer, and he talks about his experiences of encountering the divine light in his dreams and of it filling him with radical, unconditional love, like his entire being became light and love. So, and he also teaches how to find your way to that place. He had certain meditation practices that he did, and he actually lays out in the episode that we recorded, the interview we recorded, how to do that for yourself.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. I want to share a couple of the comments that are here with you.
Great.
Just bringing us back to when you were sharing the dream that you had that was recurring from the time that you were young to you're older. Yes, your nightmare, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, Tristan was sharing he's had, have had a very weird dream occurring since they were a kid, now 35, and it happens from time to time. It's a blob of soft serve ice cream. It's all black around it and keeps getting bigger and puts me into a panic. And they've had that since they were 5 and they're now 35.
I've seen this before. And the most common explanation is that the blob of blackness is a representation of deep unconsciousness. It's when we use a term falling asleep, and if you stop and examine the language and related phrases, you find this theme of falling. When you go to sleep, you're falling into unconsciousness. And then as you go through different sleep stages, you're falling into levels of unconsciousness. And one of them that we experience every 90 minutes as we're sleeping is a period that can last from 5 minutes to half an hour, 45 minutes or more. And it's called the delta stage of sleep. And in the delta stage is the most deeply unconscious phase of sleep. Your delta waves are in a frequency of about 1 to 4 hertz. And that is very slow wave brain activity that is very different from what you usually consciously experience. The waking state of sleep is very different. And what happens is that people get afraid of it because it feels like they're dying. It's an experience of little death. You are so deeply unconscious, meaning disconnect, and while that deeply unconscious, you are also very disconnected from the experience of life through the senses of the body. You have fallen asleep and you're having an out of body experience. You're not in your awareness and perception is no longer centered within your body. And that can open you up to having other experiences. This is often when people spontaneously astral, they go into the astral.
I have a kiddo that happens too.
And I'm glad they have you to help them understand what they're experiencing, because if they can master that as a before beliefs harden, if they can master it, then they'll never be afraid of anything ever again. So the blob, because it's so indistinct, to me, it has that ring of something. It's basically a representation of fear of deep unconsciousness. And that's just based off of what I've seen in patterns. I would need to talk with this person more about what they're feeling from this thing, what happens before and after they encounter it in the dream space. There are things that you could look at, like if someone says, I have a hole in my heart, there's this black space within me. They use that terminology for a reason, because there's a metaphorical truth to it. They feel like there is something within them that's just, it's just dark. And that could be something that could also be represented as this dream imagery. Right. Here's one of the things to remember about dream imagery. And I want to drop a little nugget for those people who are really into dream theory and just the experience of dreaming and understanding it better. The dream imagery is produced through the interaction of you as the conscious ego side of you goes into the dream space. It goes into this state of unconsciousness, and it encounters content that's being presented to you through the unconscious mind. But that content is information in the same way that a thought is information. You might render it as words or images, but it begins simply as information that is coming up in your own mind. Then you wrap it in imagery or you wrap it in words. The same thing happens with dream imagery. You first interact with the information that the unconscious, it's called the unconscious content. The unconscious content is brought into the space where you can interact with it. And the dream imagery produced is secondary. Gotcha. So when you see the blob in the dream, it is because you are interacting with something that you're finding within yourself that begins simply as information. So when you are interacting with, there's this thing that you're interacting with that says, come deeper, come deep into sleep, come down into the dark places, dark just like night, the dark moonless midnight. This is the darkness. This is the mystery. This is deep unconsciousness. This is deep rest. And the ego says, no, that looks to me like death. Thank you. I'm going the other direction.
Except for me. I want to be that deep where my neighbors hear me snoring.
Yes.
Just let me rest.
Yes. Yeah, I know. I understand that too. A lot of people I know who are psychic say that their dream life can be full of interactions with things that wear them out while they're sleeping, and they need to be rested up for the things that they're going to experience the next day. Recently, we had Jenny Claroscura on our podcast also, so The Dreams That Shape Us. Jenny started from a young age experiencing out of body and astral. And she started having, towards the end of the interview, she talks about how people come to her in her dreams for help. And she feels called to do this work of helping people to reunite with the fragmented parts of themselves. Like, it's called soul retrieval. The phenomenon is called soul loss. And the retrieval of it, like what she does in dreams, is called soul retrieval. And soul loss means that there is some part of you that experienced something traumatic that made it want to not be fully present in this physical world anymore. Yeah. So it looks and it says, there's this whole spectrum of reality other than the physical one where all the pain is. So I'm going to go over here and experience life here where I'm safe. And that's, by the way, is down in your own psyche. Your psyche is the interface into what's called the imaginal realms. And that includes ethereal, astral. And so those parts of you end up getting lost. And those parts of other people get lost and wander around in spaces where they're basically trying to find their way home. But if home isn't safe, then they're going to stay out there. Yeah. And people who are gifted at this kind of stuff, they will often describe their dreams as being full of these encounters. And they do the shamanic work, the psychic work in the dream state, but they sometimes say, I don't want it tonight. I need to rest. I'm worn out. I want to fall into deep unconsciousness and just, so I get it.
Homer Simpson drool happening at the same time is all good with me.
I was picturing Gramps, Grandpa.
So what if we're looking at it, if we keep moving with that, like the kiddos that have night terrors, where they're having, and it's usually between those ages of 2, 3, sometimes it stretches out to 4, but my kiddo that has had astral out of body experiences was also the kid that had those night terrors. And I would love to hear from your aspect, because it was an intuitive connection for me and trying to support him through that when he was little. But he would say, I was seeing lights flying by me and these people that were scary to me. He was out of body in that night terror and couldn't pull himself back out of it. And in that place where the soul fragments were, where there was people, where there was unhealed parts of them, which is where he went.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. Our house is pretty trippy.
Yeah. That's
because originally I was setting up to talk about which we can do after The Haunting of Hill House, where it was like sleep paralysis, because Haunting of Hill House, that show on Netflix, really brought sleep paralysis to really brought that to the forefront in conversation, because that was quite scary through that.
Yeah, that needs program to be talked about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll get there. First, I do have an entry on night terrors in my book. And I talk a bit about sleep paralysis, but let's start with night terrors. There is, we'll call it a phenomenon, because it's like some people say it's a nightmare on steroids, a night terror. But let me just say that what I've experienced of it and what I know from working with people who have these things is it's an energetic experience. This is not the conventional way that nightmares form and the reasons for why we have them. It's usually because there is some kind of deeper trauma that has been imprinted into the nervous system energetically. and you're relaxing enough when you're in the sleep state for this energy to release. And so you're basically re-experiencing the energy of a trauma, but now the energy is disconnected from the original trauma, and you can have really wildly vivid, intensely gory, terrifying experiences that don't fit the conventional mold for nightmares. And if you go to a therapist with this kind of stuff, unless they're
Oh yeah.
experience with sort of the energy work, anybody who's an energy worker is going to recognize this stuff, if they have the right combination of skills and experience. Now, but if you look at a 3-year-old, you go, have they had experiences with life that's traumatized them so much that they fragmented? Probably not. Could there be that they're experiencing things that they are unable to process and experience because they're still open in a way that makes them okay, let me put it to you this
Connected.
way. Yeah, and connected in with something that they can't understand.
Exactly.
Now, a child at 3, 4, 5, 6 years old already has enough things that it just from life, they're adjusting to physical life and their social, their familial environment, the this world. I mean, they're new to it, and most people
consciously
forget. Yeah, they're new to it consciously, and they're trying to adapt to how to function and operate in this world just in the most basic sorts of ways. Can I pull down my pants and poop in the toilet successfully? I mean, this is a challenge for a kid, So it's a way of saying that they have enough things that can cause nightmares already because everything about life is new to them and a lot of it can appear frightening. Things that later on in life won't frighten them and it won't be the stuff of nightmares for them. But if you add in a child who is psychically impressionable, which most of them are still at that age, that they are budding as far as the gifts that they have are starting to perhaps show, or the beginnings of it are starting to come in. Yeah, I can see how that could turn into an experience that is a night terror, because what they're experiencing perhaps is sensitivity to the energies of broken and fragmented pieces of people that are floating around in this world. We've caused a lot of harm. We're still doing it. We as a species. I mean, if we just look back less than 100 years ago, 50 million people on this earth died who shouldn't have. Some of them died in nuclear vapor. Some of them died in infernos where entire cities went up. Some of them died in concentration camps. Some of them died through execution where they were lined up with their family members and someone pointed a gun at them and killed them. I mean, we are experiencing, I just give this as an example. We have a history of producing these traumas. And to think that it all goes away when the person dies is naive. And so if you have a child who is psychically sensitive and probably came into this world with some kind of mission to help, then I could see at a young age where they would start experiencing this. And it's really, really important to teach them how to set boundaries so that they can turn on their ability when they want to help, and they can turn it off when they can't, they get overwhelmed by it. Plus, I wanted to mention, I know past life dreams are a real thing. I know past lives are real. I know it's been proven scientifically, which I'm sure that there's some people out there going, yeah, prove it. Well, go to the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia and go back into their 60, 70-year archive with more than 2,500 cases of study of reincarnation. Go and look at the meta studies that have been done on this that proved that it's there with a significant effect. This is real. It's true. I know it because I've had these dreams. Past lives became into my life in a way that made it undeniable. Well, here's one of the things you learn from the study of past lives. Guess when those memories start coming to you? Guess who's most open to those memories?
Little people.
3, 4, 5, 6 years old.
Yep,
It really goes away by 8 or 9, but at that age is when it comes up. And these children could be remembering things that have happened in past lives that were bad.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
My kiddos, let me tell you. So we're eating dinner. My daughter has not been born yet. So my boys are, I think I was pregnant with her. So my boys were 4 and 3 at the time, and I was pregnant with her. And my one son says, "I remember you as my mom, but you didn't look like this." He's like, "Oh yeah." I was I taller? Please let me have been taller. And he's like, and he described it all out. He described it all out twice, the same kiddo. And then I was driving. We were living on the East Coast at the time, of East Coast Canada, and I was driving into Fredericton. There in the back seat, and he says, Mom, it's okay if I die. You don't have to be sad." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I would be sad. And he said, "But you don't have to be sad." He said, "I remember being in heaven with God, and Ryan and I we were friends, and we chose to be brothers in this lifetime. And we chose you to be our mom, and we chose you to help teach you how to be patient." And now I was not working as a medium. I was not taking my kids to church. I didn't talk about any of that stuff. Like, he just spit that stuff out as a little 4-year-old in the backseat of my car. And I'm like, okay, so again, that's awesome that you guys chose to be brothers in this lifetime. Awesome, you chose me to be your mom. Can we slow down with the patience lessons? Because I'm thinking I'm cool now. I count to 10. I take deep breaths.
Yeah.
But definitely, that age bracket brings in some really, for parents to be open, because it's their truth. It's that little person's truth. And if we have forgotten to stay open-minded and to have those own experiences, so that could lead to, like, if you believe there is no spoon. I've taught kids intuitive summer camps where these kids that are extra sensitive can get together and hang out. And we've done spoon bending. So if you believe there is no spoon, you can bend that spoon. We just play some fun music and have a good time and watch these kiddos bend spoons. So do your beliefs limit your dreaming experiences? Can your beliefs?
Yes, actually, first of all, we got to talk more about the spoon bending, because I'm under contract right now to write a book on the science of the paranormal.
Josh, that's awesome.
I was just writing about psychokinesis, and I got into the science of it.
Yeah.
But I'm also wanting to get more into the personal experience of it.
Okay.
So your dreams are almost entirely created by your beliefs. It's a projection of what you believe out into for you to interact with. The entire dream landscape, from the characters and the settings and the objects, all the way through to the themes and the actions that happen in your dreams, are all basically formed around your beliefs. You can see this especially with lucid dreaming. People will believe something like, "Hey, okay, I want to fly." I'm lucid in a dream, so I'm aware that I'm dreaming. And I've heard that I can shape the experience of dreaming, and I really want to fly. And then they'll flap their arms. Why are they flapping their arms? Because they think that birds fly and that this is the only way that they can take flight. Right. Well, you're not in an atmosphere where there's no air. You're in a dream. Right. There's no feathers on your arms, but they believe this, that they have to do the movement. I've had people say that they would fly by doing a swimming motion. They do like a swimming stroke. One of my favorite lucid dreams, because I programmed my mind. Hey, I'm lucid. Okay, calm down. All right, become aware of what's going on. Let's anchor into this environment, and now let's fly. Sometimes I just take off right away, but other times I try to practice some of the steps to be able to stabilize the dream. And I found myself on a brown leather recliner with my feet up in the air. So I'm flying feet forward, and I'm up on a brown leather recliner. And it's like that old Memorex commercial where the guy's hair is blowing back from the speaker. Like yeah. This was a commercial from a long time ago, but go stay with me here if you're part of the younger crowd. So I've got my arms up, I've got my feet up, and I'm flying around my backyard. It's right over there. I can look out my back windows. I was flying around my backyard in a lounge chair. You know, for some reason, my beliefs made it so that I needed to have a prop with me.
Right.
Sometimes I can fly on my own. So beliefs very much shape what you think is possible, not only in your conscious life, but in your unconscious dreaming life. And it very much carries over into the dream space. Now, does that mean that if you don't believe in aliens, that you couldn't have an abduction experience or a UFO land in your dream? No, no, it doesn't. The dream can definitely reach beyond your beliefs to create these experiences. But you very much can limit what you think is possible in the dream space simply based off of your beliefs. Take it the other direction, and if you believe something to be true, like I'm magical, take that
Well, you
over in
are.
dream space. Yeah. Especially if you're
Yeah.
talking about one of your kiddos. Be like,
Yeah.
kiddo, you're magical. You ever heard of Gandalf the wizard? You know? Or,
In this house, yes.
yeah, yeah. Or,
Let's be
uh,
Harry Potter.
yeah, Harry Potter, and watch them go into their dream space and feel empowered. This word, I think, is very important because you hear it a lot in the very deep study of consciousness and dreaming being a form of consciousness that's very, very interesting from a research standpoint. There's so much we can learn from it. Um, but you find that something that's mentioned about this is that the um, with along with your expanded consciousness becomes an expanded sense of your power. Now, in a dream, it might be, let's say, the power of telekinesis. You have the power in your dreams to move objects with your mind, a flick of the wrist, a
Right.
toss of the wand. Well, people would look at that and they go, well, that doesn't have anything to do with ordinary reality. And you make kids think that they can move objects with their mind, next thing you know, they're going to be on, Ritalin. Um, but here's the thing is that it actually does translate over because people have the power to move other people with their words, with
Mhm.
their ideas. Now you do have the power to move things. So that is, I think, an important thing to consider is that the dream world becomes a place for you to practice.
Yeah.
And if you can open up your beliefs about what you can do in the dream world, it empowers you. And vice versa, by the way. You
Yeah.
find more empowerment through in your waking life, and you turn around, and now you've found that it's bled over into your dreams in a way so that you feel more powerful in your dreams. Um, I'm I'm looking in. There's a psychic named Ingo Swan who I've been following. He's dead now, but Ingo was in the remote viewing program. He trained
Mhm.
other remote viewers. He was a very, very gifted person. And he talks a lot about how empowerment is actually scary to the sort of societal cultural structures that already exist, and that there are a lot of forces that are trying to disempower us. So I would say grab them when they're as young as you can get your hands on them, and make sure that there's some corner of their mind that always believes that
Mhm.
things are possible. Because as you mentioned through manifestation, we know that beliefs are the what you believe to true be true becomes true. Um,
Right.
or as the Huna shamans say, or the Huna is a tradition. It's the root of the word kahuna. A lot of people have heard of the big kahuna. A
Right.
Huna was a practitioner of the Huna way of life, a philosophy that also involved a lot of magical stuff. They had the Huna, the native shamans of Hawaii were some very magical people. And their number one thing that they know to be true about the world, we say belief, but they know this to be true, is that the world is what you think it is. So the very way that you experience life and life in the world reflects itself back to you is based off of
Mhm.
your beliefs. So it's a very, very powerful, probably the most powerful faculty of the mind for creating reality.
And understanding that it all has to be in alignment. Your thoughts, words, deeds, and actions. Like you can say something, but if you're not feeling it, believing it, and acting in it, then it's not in alignment. So
Yeah.
those thoughts, words, and that um, we're human. So we're still going to have human moments that are not all the yummy kitten toots and unicorn feelings. We're going to feel anger and sadness, and those things are okay. So when you get out of alignment, still owning those feelings. But I have taught many people, including my children, this phrase, like clear, cancel, and delete that thought. Thank you very much. So if I have put something out into the universe that isn't in alignment, that's going to throw me off kilter, immediately recognizing that and saying, we're just going to clear, cancel, and delete that thought. Thank you very much. Like trying to roll it back in,
You're owning it too. And that's
exactly, taking responsibility.
Demonstrate for your child that people can make mistakes and correct it on the spot. And, now we're all better. By the way, I wanted to, where is he? Oh, I got to go this way. That is Niles. And I noticed you have he's my boy. He likes this spot. This is where I do a lot of my writing. During this time of year, it's too hot to be outside and here in Tucson. So I sit right here and he'll come right up behind me and he starts purring and sometimes he'll kind of bring he's just the best cat.
They feel it. They feel when it's good energy, right? And they want to be a part of it.
Yeah, he's my boy too. And I noticed that you have an owl behind you. We talked about that via email before we came on the air. My nickname is RadOwl online, and you were asking me about the origins of the nickname, and I said, well, you take rad, R-A-D, put it together with owl, and you have owls are thinkers and wise, and you have rad, which is radical, different way of thinking. So you have a radical thinker. And a lot of the things that I've gotten into that dreams opened the door for me to get into started there. Precognition was something I had to find out through dreams. And I found out there's a whole science of precognition that is science. It's validated. It's out there. There's, a history of the study of this going back decades. There's really good theories and work that gone into it. A lot of case studies, tons of anecdotes. So as a radical thinker, I've had to, in some ways, drop the pretense of being anything other than a radical thinker. So I kind of owned that side of me by assigning myself that nickname. Plus, it's kind of cool.
It's super cool, and you've had it for quite a while.
Yeah, I have.
That's how you're known.
It's on reddit.com. You can go to reddit.com/u/RadOwl, RADOWL. And that's my user history. And you'll see that I signed up there. I started interacting with the community in 2009. And I've got a posting history there that I encourage people to follow because I interact all the time with people centered on their dreams. And that has now created an archive of information that's really deep. Tens of, probably, I would say over 10,000 comments and posts, mostly comments. And I teach people how to, for one, talk with others about their dreams. But I also use it as a platform for teaching what I know. I now have 4 books out about dreams and dream analysis, dream interpretation. I've got 2 more that are written. I'm just waiting. I got to clear the pipeline with other work to be able to finish these guys and get them out there. So basically, I've got a lot of teachings about dreams, and I share it freely online. And if you want to see not only a taste of that content, but how I apply it, when somebody says, I had a dream and XYZ happened, and then I come in at Reddit and we have a discussion about it, and you can follow the thread and see the back and forth that I have with them. And I try to, knowing that there are people who follow my work that way, I try to not just, be like, well, you had this dream and, here are meanings related to it. Like, I want to explain why. Not only for people who are reading it, but for the person who I'm interacting with, because I'm limited by the format. I've got to
Right.
interact with a discussion board, thread type of atmosphere or environment. And I have to always remember that they are the only one who really knows what their dream means. And that it's
Well, you're
my
empowering them.
way to it by empowering them. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good teacher. Like, and I was thinking about that when I was, prepping for today, thinking about how you share unconditionally that nightmare that was just yours that you were hanging on to for a very long time, and sharing transparently. And that's really, I personally feel that that's what we're all here to do, share unconditionally from our heart space, the gift of who we are. And as we do our self-healing and self-reflection, we are learning more gifts of who we are, and we just continuously share it. And if we're sharing unconditionally, we're learning from what is being mirrored to us by the people around us, right?
Yeah. Learning to see ourselves in them, not just in a metaphorical, but there's a literal truth to it. Because my dreams have led me to a revelation that there is one consciousness in this entire universe, and everything is a manifestation of it. Connected. Now, trust me, that took me a long time to swallow that one, because like most people, I grew up in the materialist paradigm that says that everything is a result of physical matter, including consciousness in the mind. And so as I looked for answers, as that one grew stale and I found too many examples of things that it couldn't explain, let's just begin with the mind-body problem of consciousness. And you can take off from there. You find that the materialist paradigm doesn't explain some things. And when you want to know what those things are and you go there, you start going into the nature of consciousness. And then you start finding out that there are layers or aspects of consciousness and mind that are not just yours. They're shared. The dream space teaches you this. And if you go into the theories of Dr. Carl Jung and the theory of the collective unconscious, you start there and you go, oh, wait, he's saying, one of the preeminent psychologists of the 20th century said that there is a shared layer of the mind. So if you start there, you go, well, then does that mean that there's, if there's a shared aspect of the mind, that means there's a shared aspect of life. And so then you start following the trail from there, and it ends up in places like the philosophy of idealism, where you go, this actually appears to be true, that there's one consciousness, one mind, and everything in the universe is an expression of it, which means in the end that we're all very, very intimately connected. Exactly. And when I see you, my brother, my sister, in the sense of anyone is my brother or my sister, they're so closely, intimately related to me that we're sharing something, an essential aspect of ourselves that is, it's more than just a thought exercise. There's a metaphysical reality to it that I've found out is true, but it took me a long time to get there.
I appreciate you being here and sharing this time with me today and with everybody that was here. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show.
It's been my pleasure. And thank you for inviting me on. It's been brilliant. A wonderful conversation. Yeah.
Good. Fabulous. I would love to have you back another time. So we're just going to say thank you to all the listeners. Thank you to everybody that commented, and a huge shout out. Thank you to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network, 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. Thanks for being here. You've been listening to